everybody, and welcome to the Body and Soul Expo. I'm very excited because my guest today, in a way, we go kind of way back, Eric.
We really do.
And I have to tell people this. One of the first times you did a radio show with me, I'm hearing some like noise in the background, and I said, Eric, there's a little bit of noise in the background. And you said, I'm sorry, I'm on a street corner in Italy doing the show with you. So I said, oh, okay. And that's the kind of person you are. You weren't going to postpone or cancel because you were in Italy and you took the time to be with me. And I never forgot that. So I know I've thanked you before, but I'm going to thank you again.
Well, thank you. I remember there standing on the street corner at night while people are walking in and out of the restaurant. I'm trying to talk, and then someone walks out of the restaurant and goes, "Hi, aren't you Dr. Eric Pearl?" And I said, "Yes, but why don't we chat a little later because I'm on an interview right now."
That's right. That was great. So, Dr. Eric, I and everybody else want to hear, how did you come into the limelight? Because from the story that I've heard before, you were a chiropractor on Melrose Avenue, which I know all about. I was at the improvisation almost every night of the week in the 80s. And I ended up representing like all the comedians that were starring on Evening at the Improv and at the Improv and the Comedy Store. So you were literally blocks away from the Improv, and you were a chiropractor just doing your thing. What happened after that?
Well, yeah, I had that office on Melrose Place, and I was practicing chiropractic as I had been for quite a while. And at some point in time, I started really just sort of playing with the idea. I mean, I want to say contemplating, but somewhere between contemplation and playing, okay. Not quite so heavy, not quite so light. Um, that somehow or other, there's a oneness, a unity, something, what we think of as a connectedness, because we see everything as, as separate and distinct until we recognize that we're all one. So we kind of use words like connecting, except you can't connect unless you're two. You have to have two to connect. When we're one, we don't even look for a connection. There we are. But in that contemplation, as I would adjust my patients, instead of going in and finding a little bone and going click, click, I would connect with the person physically and just for one moment, think about the understanding of the reunification, let's say, of humanity, the physical, with humanity, the spiritual. And in that pause, I would just take a little breath in and out with their breath. It was almost as if we were both doing one breath in, one breath out, and then I'd make the same little physical adjustment, okay? Wherever it was in the spine, anywhere. And somehow or other, it wasn't that same physical adjustment. They started having just greater, I'll call them healings, greater healing responses to the adjustments. And as I did that for maybe about a year, somewhere along the lines, some other things were happening in my life, kind of unrelated. I ended a relationship that I had been in for 6 years, which I thought would be the relationship of my life. And in that ending, I actually found, I know people say this as a phrase, except it was real for me. I had difficulty placing one foot ahead of the other to even walk. And which is sort of problematic when you're a chiropractor because your patient's on the table and you have to walk around them. And each step was filled with pain, emotional pain. But I moved forward with that. And my employees were having the usual, maybe a little more than the usual struggles between them, not getting along with each other, not doing the right things. And really, the place that I was in, I didn't really have the patience to sit down and handle them in the highest way that I would hope I would be able to do today if I were in that situation. So I did what practice management seminars tell you to do, but believe me, you have not lived until you've done this. At a certain point, I just let everyone go at once. Everyone, which really meant I was answering the phones, filling out the insurance forms, stamping the envelopes, chasing the postman, letting people in, taking them out. And that lasted for about a good hour or so. And I realized I had to hire someone. I had a friend of a friend who was an HR person, and she said, let's set up interviews, put out something, look for people, we'll set up interviews, and we'll schedule them all starting early in the morning next Wednesday. So I did. Opened the doors early in the morning, and in they came, tall ones, short ones, skinny ones, fat ones, ones that looked pleasant, ones that didn't look quite so pleasant. And then came in this one, just this one person who, for those of you whose memories stretch back this far, at least in the US, she was both the visual and audible incarnation of Fran Drescher's character, the nanny. She had that voice, way about her. She had that whole movement, and quickly, the people who were with me, helping me, evaluate, give me their input on the interviews, they all huddled together and said, "Whatever you do, do not hire this one." And I had to have her. Just had to have her, because basically you can't train personality, you know? As a lot of us know, you go to a doctor's office, and if they've got a miserable person greeting you from the front desk on, sometimes you stop going no matter how good the doctor is, which doesn't make a lot of logical sense, but I guess it must make emotional sense. Anyhow, I knew I could train anyone to do a job, I thought, but you can't train personality. So I hired her. She was fun. She was funny. Energy was up. It was entertaining. Most of the employees liked her, except for the ones I later found out she was borrowing money from. But anyhow, one day, not too far into when she started, she said, "You know what, Dr. Pearl, you've been under a lot of stress lately. You need to take a day off and go to the beach," which obviously meant the office needed to close for a day and she wanted to go to the beach and I should be the one driving us. I said, all right, sounded like a good idea anyway. So we took off to Venice Beach, California, and found a nice place. We're relaxing in the sun. She gets up and wanders away somewhere, comes back, and she said, "I saw this woman reading cards and you need to have your cards read." And I thought, I don't mind the idea. It could be fun of having your cards read, but I'd like to go to someone who comes with a recommendation, has a reputation, not some woman sitting on the beach with folding chairs and a card table. But there she was, and there I went. And she said, "I've got $10 readings and $20 readings." And we really rushed to go down to the beach so quickly. I didn't think about the money I had in my pocket. I probably only had about $20 and we didn't even, have lunch yet. So I said, all right, we'll take the $10 reading, which left us $10 for a cheap lunch. She gave me a reading, which I don't really recall much of. It just didn't make a whole big impact on me, except at the end when she said, "There's this work that I do and you need to have it done." So I listened. And she said, "You see, at one point in time, humanity was connected to the universe. There are these lines on your bodies that continue out to the stars and the planets and the spaces in between the planets." And I'm going, this is sounding a little woo-woo to me, more than. She said, "But at one point in time, there was a disconnection that took place." And I did research this further, and I do know the stories of it. We won't go all into that depth right now. But there was a disconnection that took place, and she does this work that will help reconnect us to the stars and the planets, space in between, and everything else, and I needed it. So I listened for a moment. I said, all right, well, how much is it? She said, $333. And I thought real quickly, no, thank you. Because, well, first of all, $333 back then, because that was August of 1993. I know why I know that date. I'll tell you another time. But right now, that money would be almost four times that, you know? It would be like 12 to $1,500 in the equivalent. It's a lot of money. So she said, okay, well, you can read about it in this book. It's called The Book of Knowledge, The Keys of Enoch by Dr. J.J. Hartog. So I said, thank you very much. I wrote down the title, went home, but I did keep thinking about it. So I stopped into a very large metaphysical bookstore that was in Los Angeles at the time, and I
On Melrose
asked if they
Avenue?
had the book. On Melrose Avenue. It was called the Bodhi Tree Bookstore, right?
Yes.
And the person I was talking to said, "Follow me." I was like almost in a movie. Follow me. So I followed him or her, I don't remember who it was, over, and they pulled a ladder up to the front of a bookcase, walked up high, grabbed a book, and brought it down as if they were presenting something to me, not the way you normally show someone a book. And I looked at it, and the front of the cover was white with gold embossed lettering in it. It did look very special. I said, all right, I want to read this. She said, it's only, the woman who read my card said, you can read about it in this book, chapter, I think it was 317 or 714. I have to look at the numbers later. I think it was chapter 317. Anyway, it's only like 6 pages. Okay. 6 or 8 pages. So I went to read through the chapter, and it was written in a very interesting way. It was fascinating. And you also really had to let yourself melt a little, had to let the parameters of the thinking mind sort of soften, at least, um, to start to absorb it. And there were parts I understood, and there were parts I didn't understand. And I read a little more, and then finally I left. But I kept thinking about it. I just kept thinking about it. So a day or two later, I went back to read it again, and I looked at that chapter 317, I think, and parts of it made sense. The thing was, it was the parts of it that didn't make sense began to make sense, and parts of it that did make sense weren't making sense to me anymore. So I went back and forth another time or two, and I even went into the store once and had the audacity to ask them if they would just photocopy those 7 pages, because the book was also at that time very pricey. It was $50 back then. It'd probably be $150 right now by value of the dollar, even if the price didn't go up. And it was a big, thick book, and I'm thinking, well, 6, 8 little pages, big deal. So I copied it, took them home, still had the same process with understanding, not understanding. So eventually I figured it would just be cheaper if I paid the woman her $333 and made my appointment. So she said, all right, it's an appointment made over 2 days. So I scheduled the first day. I went down to her. And on day one, she had me lying down on a massage table. Just kick off your shoes, lie down, relax. She took her fingertips and started it felt like she was tracing line patterns or movements over my body. And I was lying there thinking, not in the most spiritual way. I was thinking, I really cannot believe I gave this woman $333 to draw lines on my body with her fingertips. But I was there. So I held perfectly still and I let her do it. And at the end, I had experienced what I felt was nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. But she sat me up very slowly. She said, sit up slowly, slide toward the edge of the table, take your feet, touch your feet on the ground, get back into your body. And, and again, with my little spiritual demeanor, I'm thinking, I don't know what you think went on here, lady, but I missed it. Anyway, I thanked her very much and left. And the only more ridiculous thing I imagine I had done was I agreed to come back for part two because I already paid her. So, all right, I went back for part two, same thing, kick off your shoes, lie down, trace the line patterns on my body. But this time it really was different. So I should start off by telling you it was an impressively hot, hot August day at a beach in her little one bedroom, maybe non-air conditioned apartment. I couldn't hold my body still, but I forced myself to because I paid her money. I didn't want to mess anything up. I held still, held still, held still. But by the end, I was so cold. She had to wrap me in a blanket. I mean, my teeth were actually chattering. And so I thanked her. I said goodbye. I remember walking out toward my car. I remember getting into my car. I can starting the ignition. I can see the steering wheel in front of me. I can feel myself there. And then it was almost as if the car, almost on its own, started to move forward. I don't remember anything else. I don't remember anything much else after that. I don't remember getting home. I don't remember going to bed that night. Here's what I do remember. I woke up about an hour later and my lamp, which I always shut off, turned itself on. That's what woke me up. This bright light came bursting through my eyes in my sleep. And it wasn't seemingly anything spiritual or metaphysical. It was just the lamp that I had for 10 years and never turned itself on before, but there it was. I opened my eyes and my bedroom door, which is always closed when I go to sleep, was open. No one was home but me and my dog. So I got up. I found the largest knife I could place my hands on. I saw an old empty spray can of pepper spray that from a self-defense class I had taken probably, I don't know, 10 years earlier, and started walking through the house, hoping that would make it look dangerous if anyone saw me. And my Doberman pincher was behind my knees, pushing me down the stairs. That wasn't really her nature. And it felt like someone was in my house. It really did. And it was a big old Spanish house with staircases that curved and turns and different doorways into rooms. And I'm walking slowly and I'm looking behind me, see if anyone was hiding in the shadows. It was like a movie, you know. I didn't want to be that person where everyone's sitting in the audience going, "Don't go down the stairs." But I had no choice. So so I looked around, and finally I realized after about 15, 20 minutes that I'd be a wreck the next day if I didn't get some sleep. So yeah, that was a Sunday night. So I went into the office on that Monday. Oh, I went to turn off my lamp and the knob. I'm rather OCD. Everything clicks on. My toothpaste cap is on tight. Doors are shut, locked. Windows are locked. Everything's clicked into place. But the knob that turning the lamp wasn't clicked fully into position. It's only rotated enough to like ignite that bulb. So I thought that's not me. And I hope whoever it is in here lets me wake up in the morning, but one way or the other, I'm going to sleep. So I went into my office that morning. And before anything, my employees looked at me. They said, "What happened to you over the weekend?" I said, "Nothing. Why? This, you look so different. You sound so different." And I said, "Really, really nothing," because I really didn't want to go into some story and start to explaining to people that I already felt foolish enough. I paid some woman, some Jewish gypsy who reads cards on the beach, who calls me bubble at $333 to line some of my body with her fingerprints. It's kind of hard to carry that story and look realistic about it. So I just didn't. Anyway, I went in to adjust my first patient. And normally my patients would start by lying on their stomach, lying face down. So on their stomach, I'd start adjusting from their neck down to their lower back. And then I'd turn them over. I'd finish up toward the top of the neck and then tell them to close their eyes and just relax for 15, 30, 60 seconds, whatever they want. Just let everything settle in before they jump up. And when my first patient opened his eyes, he looked at me and he said, "Who walked into the room while I was standing here?" I said, "No one." "Why?" He said, "No." Like, "Who stood at the doorway while I was lying here?" I said, "No one." "Why?" He said, "I heard someone there." They weren't there. "I felt them." No. Back and forth, back and forth. And I could tell when he finally said, "Okay," I knew he didn't believe me. I just knew it. Anyway, I went into the next room, adjusted the next patient. As I'm moving my hands near her, I'm beginning to feel sensations in my hands. And as I'm observing the sensations I'm feeling, and I'm looking at her on the table. Her muscles are starting to move, her eyebrows twitching, her fingers going up and down, maybe the shoulder or the foot. And anyway, I touched her gently. I said, okay. Now, said the same thing I said to the first patient. I always say, let your eyes stay closed, relax for, a minute or so before you jump up. She opened her eyes. She said, who walked into the room when I was standing here? I said, nobody. Why? She said, the person who stood at the door said there was no one there. I heard them. They weren't there. I felt them. They weren't there. Well, okay, this is my 12th year in practice. Now, get it. 12th year in practice, no one had ever said that to me before. And on this one day, 7 patients, none of whom knew each other,
Wow. Wow.
all reported the same thing. Someone stood at the doors, someone walked into the room, some of them said they walked around them while they were lying down on the table. Some of them said they ran around them, and 2 of them actually looked me straight in the eye and said, well, it felt like someone was flying around the ceiling. I'm going, oh, all right. But other patients, as I'm working with them, when they open their eyes, they're telling me they're seeing colors that they never saw, smelling flowers they never smelled. And as I move my hands near them, their bodies are moving too, and they would feel me. What they said would feel me in different places, even though I was standing in one place. And then I think it was even that first day, one patient who came in a wheelchair left without needing the wheelchair.
Wow.
A couple days later, some of the parents of my younger children were calling, asking what happened. They said that the kids who had cerebral palsy or epilepsy weren't having seizures any longer, weren't requiring their medications. Other people have regained the use of a limb they hadn't had for a while, or their color blindness had vanished. I mean, all these different things. And it's not that it happened with everyone. It's not that it happened with everyone. But here's the thing. It happened with a strongly significant number of people, a strongly significant number of times. And I'd have to have been like an ostrich and buried my head in the sand to not see it, to not see it. So people are coming by and saying, what did you do? And I said, I didn't do anything and don't tell anyone. Well, that went over. And so soon people started coming in asking if I would teach it. And I said, I don't know how to teach it. I'm standing here, I'm waving my hands in the air, feeling things, looking like an idiot. You go outside in your neighborhood, try it, see what your neighbors say about you. But um, things were really happening, and media started calling, and researchers started coming, and they were measuring fields around me, saying they were finding aspects of light. Not that I always saw the light. Somehow their meters measured light and information in fields that they had not witnessed before. And finally, there was a place, you might know this place, an adult education organization called the Learning Annex. They had like 4 locations in California and 1 in New York. And they asked me if I would come out and speak at the one in Los Angeles. So I said, all right. And they arranged for 25 people. They had a class of 25 people. So here's the thing about me. I'm rather off the cuff, off the top of my head as I speak. But now they're coming to learn something. So I figure there must be learning points. So I'm trying to make notes as I'm leading up to this occasion, this event where I'm going to be teaching people that I don't know. And I'm making my notes and changing. I'm even adding and making notes while I'm driving down to the presentation. I got there, I walked in the room, I opened up a massage table because I figured I'll give some demonstrations and let them play. And I looked at all the people, and I looked at my notes and the people and my notes and the people and my notes. I can't work from notes on this. I actually crumpled it up and threw it away. And I said, here, I'm going to tell you a story. So I started telling the story that we're talking about right now. And I said, now I'm going to let each of you feel it in your hands because you can feel this. I mean, this is definitely, distinctly palpable. I let one person feel it in their hands. I had one person lie down. And then I said, now play with your hands this way above the other person. It's not done requiring touch. And the person on the table's bodies would start to move like they were moving with me. And I go, okay, next. And then we trade places, next, next. And on that day, let's just say I released 25 new healers onto an unsuspecting planet.
See, yes.
The phone started ringing so much, I had to get my very first computer. Um, and ended up soon after media having to get more people to help answer the phone calls and everything else. And this is all an exploration. Patients are losing consciousness. They're saying phrases. There were 6 phrases that they shared. We are here to tell you to continue doing what you're doing. What you're doing is bringing light and information. What you're doing is reconnecting strands. What you're doing is reconnecting strings. And then there were like 2 other phrases, and they were coming out of over in the first 3 months of starting in Christmas of '93. Over 50 different patients lost consciousness and spoke those same words, and they never had voices come through them before. They didn't know each other. Some of them left my practice. They were scared, were angry. I said, I don't know what you're pissed off about. I said, you're the one talking. But so much was happening. So much what we found was that once you interact with this, for reasons I'll explain when we do the presentation um, in North Palm Beach, you interact with these aspects of energy, light, and information. I used to say that they activate something within you. What they activate is our recognition of them. You see, I viewed this as healing started coming in. Coming in from where? I don't know. How did healing start coming in? Well, it have to be somewhere to get to here, but I have to suddenly realize that as time has gone on, see, in the first book that I wrote, it's called The Reconnection, Heal Others, Heal Yourself. It's like in 40 languages, and I explained it exactly the way I saw it. Now, the truth of healing doesn't change. It's the same truth. But as human beings, our recognition of it evolves. So the second book that I put out, that's on Amazon also, is called Solomon Speaks on Reconnecting Your Life. That became a collection of my patients who didn't channel before they experienced reconnective healing, the messages that they brought through, which is really powerful. And I didn't even put out that book for like 15, 20 years because I was thinking, I don't need my name attached to a book of channeling. I don't know what it is, but at a certain point in time, I have to realize, gee, that's my ego being in judgment of how I'm going to be viewed. It's not for me to withhold a gift. It's really not. So, but in the recognition of that I am you and you are me, and we're one with everyone and everything, and we are love with everyone and everything. That doesn't mean we might not dislike a lot of people. Our essence is peace. It's love. That's our beingness. It gets hidden by our experiences. You know, we get pissed off. Some guy cut us off in traffic, or they're holding up a line, or we're rushing and we're late, and we sort of get hidden who we are by our experiences. Like, you know, you walk outside and you go, oh, it's a gray sky. The sky is blue. It's always blue. It's just hidden by the clouds. They'll pass. Um, and it's the same thing with our love and our beingness. We forget this. So we are love, which really means, hard as this is to understand, to believe, we love everyone. You love everyone. And not before while you're sitting there going, I don't think so. No, you don't like everyone. There are a lot of people we don't like. There are a lot of people we intensely don't like. There are some people we tolerate. And there are some people we really enjoy. But love is our essence, and that's who we are. And something happens when you feel this energy, light, and information, when you just feel it. Suddenly, otherness and separation and all the experiences seem to melt away, and suddenly you're just presence. You're just one. You're just one. And somehow, in that experience, healings happen. And then you just let go. And the most amazing healings happen for people, whether it's physical healings, whether it's regaining their senses, whether it's the ability to become pregnant again. Within a lot of younger women often start menstruating again or become pregnant like 14 to 28 days later. It's very strange because that's so often that's the number of, in this of days in this cycle. I don't know how this happens. I don't know how this happens. And this is part of the beauty. Once we're willing to not know, I don't know are three of the most important words we can put together. Once we're willing to not know, the knowingness comes into us and it is beyond words because words are form and the healing is formless. And suddenly we start going, oh, I forgot to do this part of my technique or that or the other. Oh, did I do it wrong? And I'm going to tell you right now, you didn't forget. You didn't forget. You remembered. You remembered who you are. You remembered that you are the healing. The clouds parted, and you remember is always blue. I don't know what else to do with this, but I promise if you're there, I'm going to give you a chance to really, you just leave it here. I hope you like it.
Amazing stuff, Eric. And uh, I know that you've gone around the country doing healing weekends. I tried like anything to come down to Miami one year. I remember it was around Christmas time, and I just couldn't get down there. And I'm really sorry to this day. But are you saying that when you do these weekends, that some a majority of the people are able to also heal?
I know that this is going to sound difficult to grasp at first. You'll understand it once you experience it. Everyone is able to. Does that mean that everyone will choose to? Most everyone will. Everyone will be able to. Look, we've trained over 100,000 people, 100 and maybe 40,000 people around the world how to facilitate reconnective healing in these training programs. Sometimes they've got, 7, 8 languages. It looks like the United Nations. And since when we got back from our last training program that we'd given in Costa Rica, 2 or 3 days later came COVID, and people weren't excited about convening in live, gatherings at that point. So we sort of relaxed and stayed in and talked to people on the internet, and Jillian and I facilitate distance healings for people as you'll learn how to do also at training programs. Now they're nice and intimate. They're more comfortable. They're smaller sized. But right now, Bruce, what we're doing at your event isn't really as much of a training program as it'll be an introductory sharing, discussion, and something interactive where you will have transformation take place. You will have changed. You will be able to start to play with people and make changes in their lives. Does this mean you're a reconnective healing facilitator? No, there's more. But it'll be tempting to look at this and go, wow, this is so dramatic. There couldn't possibly be more. Surprise. So just come for this first part, okay? It's kind of like come for some of the meal and wait till you see what else is being served and wait till you get to dessert.
Unbelievable, Eric. Fantastic. I really appreciate you spending this time and introducing people. I loved hearing your story. I mean, and everyone will love hearing your story. And I sure hope that we pack them in because you and Danian and the other speakers are just world class people.
Wait till you hear Daniel Brinkley. I haven't seen Daniel for years. Daniel and I, we can't even let us be on the same stage for too long because he's just too funny. And then we get really funny. Well, we'll try to keep ourselves separated until we're interacting with you. Maybe.
Oh, unbelievable. God bless, Eric. Really appreciate it. Thanks for taking your
Uh,
time. This was great. And I will see you in about a week.
I'll see you in about a week. Thanks. All
God
right.
bless.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.